good one. Kosta always puts on a good show. We can see a couple of changes already. The Riolu no longer with Kosta's team, but he does have a lineup of Goodra, Cinderace, Comfey stays, pretty key there, Whimsicott, Rillaboom, and Lapras, with Hippolyte using the Excadrill, Togekiss, Urshifu, Amoonguss, Rotom in the Heat form, and Tyranitar.
Yeah, so still going to be seeing the Comfey, so I'd be interested to see if he's still going to be bringing that to this matchup. I don't believe he had the Lapras in the previous week, and that is something that players have been talking about with the combination of the Comfey and the Lapras. With the Comfey having access to Triage, putting its healing moves a very fast priority tier, even faster than some fake outs as well, and the redirection in the Follow Me's, it's able to activate your weakness policy, whether that's with a Draining Kiss to activate the weakness policy or a Giga Drain. They'll be able to bypass the redirection, which Hippolyte did have in that Amoonguss. It would be able to activate the weakness policy before that redirection as well. And we've got quite the tried and true Sand Core coming out from Hippolyte as well, which he is going to be leading with.
Yeah, I mean, they're a pair that you often see together. Excadrill and Tyranitar are a nightmare to deal with when they get going. There's the Sand Stream, no shock there. And you have to imagine that Mold Break has been left at home for this one. No activation on it. And of course, it's going to be the Sand Rush on that Excadrill. So really, really cool to see kind of these classic cores coming through. Kosta responds with a Comfey and a Lapras. Definitely a little bit more defensive. I think this is very much a different mirror with these two paired up. And you have to imagine that Lapras is going to try and set up some defenses here.
It can also go on the offenses as well. It's going to be threatening down the Excadrill and the Tyranitar with those super effective Max Geysers potentially coming out as well. But then you always have to be wary of the Tyranitar. It is going to be super effective against the Lapras, and if you fire off a Max Geyser into a weakness policy of the Tyranitar, it would do huge damage back to that Lapras as well.
Yep, well, as we get into it, we are going to get the good old Turn 1 Dynamax, something that I think a lot of people in this very offensive format are getting used to, something that Series 5 has definitely forced people to do. And it's the Tyranitar that's going to be Dynamaxed here. Not a bad choice. I don't think either of them are a bad choice, but Tyranitar gets the benefit of it this time. Health pool obviously shooting up there. And we get to see exactly how much it can do. Lapras not Gigantamaxing, something it very often does right off the bat, just protecting itself. Excadrill's Iron Head will head towards that Comfey, but the Berry is going to help it out there. You do really need to take those hits as well as possible. The Babiri Berry, previously common on Togekiss, now on the Comfey. But Tyranitar just max rock falling, doesn't fall for the Protect on the Lapras, doubles into the Comfey, and Comfey is taken out before it's even given a chance to move.
Yeah, and the Protect on the Lapras not really coming into play at all, and usually you do want to be Dynamaxing that Lapras immediately to fire off those big resonances to get the Aurora Veil set up, all those geysers against the two super effective Pokemon, but not going on the offensive here and getting punished quite heavily. Comfey was very able to take the Iron Head very comfortably with that Babiri Berry as well, so it did need that double up to take it out, but now there's no potential self-proc of the weakness policy from the Comfey. Instead, the Rillaboom's going to be coming in. It's going to be threatening down the Sand Core as well. Rillaboom does have a very good matchup against both the Excadrill and the Tyranitar, and both Pokemon could respond with a Dynamax for Kosta's side, whether that is that Rillaboom being able to fire off some big drum solos in that grassy terrain it's set up, or if the Lapras just wanted to wait a turn so that it could go for the Gigantamax this turn and go for those geysers to overwrite the sand, or set up that Resonance with the Aurora Veil.
Yeah, well, Kosta does realise he's got to start getting his Dynamax or Gigantamax into play as soon as possible to match this Tyranitar. The max rockfall is certainly going to cause trouble and keep those special defenses up as well, which helps out against the Lapras. So it's pretty key to try and change that one up a little bit. We'll see exactly what he decides to go for. A lot of people don't lead right off the bat with something like the Vortex just because they want to slow things down and get those defenses up. Tyranitar, though, moving before the Lapras is given a chance, does hit it with a max rockfall. Good job, Gigantamax. Takes that pretty well, and also gets to activate its weakness policy. So its offense is now much more threatening than it was before. Lapras will respond with the G-Max Resonance. That's heading towards the Excadrill. The Excadrill, of course, not given a chance to play because of that fake out earlier in the turn. And he levels up the Pokemon count and sets up the Aurora Veil for him. So that's something that is going to be really important to Kosta to see out the rest of this match. No damage put back down on the Tyranitar. And there we go. We're just going to round out the turn with the good old Sandstream damage.
Yeah, both players having to be quite wary of the weakness policies, confirmed on the Lapras and most likely on that Tyranitar as well. And the Tyranitar also outspeeding the Lapras, being able to activate the weakness policy before the Lapras moved, meant it was able to fire off a huge max resonance into the Excadrill and easily take it out. Rotom is definitely going to be threatening the Lapras, as well as that Rillaboom as well, with the electric type attacks into the Lapras and the fire moves into the Rillaboom. And the Tyranitar being able to outspeed the Lapras here is going to be very key for Hippolyte. We've seen how much damage it did to the Lapras before the Aurora Veil was set up, and now that the Aurora Veil is set up on Kosta's side, probably still going to be in range of a Rockfall again coming out from the Tyranitar. So Kosta's going to have to be very wary of the Rockfalls coming out from the Lapras, and also the super effective moves from the Rotom. Maybe because the Rillaboom and the Lapras are threatened by this Rotom, it could be an opportunity for Hippolyte to set up one of those nasty plots that the Rotom wants to go for, or he could just decide to go on the offense and try and take some KOs here.
I really like the Rotom selection here. It puts so much pressure down. You can't ignore the Tyranitar on its last turn of its Dynamax, obviously. But of course, the Rotom's there threatening with some really good offense of its own. So really smart kind of selections from Hippolyte. Nothing that we talked about from the Rotom. The Will-O-Wisp landing there, no overheats. Just want to keep that Rillaboom at bay, kind of making up for some of the defensive boosts that Kosta's got. But it's a Max Guard that takes the Max Rockfall. And the Woodhammer firing back, it is going to activate the weakness policy. There's the confirmation you talked about earlier, Jamie. But because of that burn, it doesn't even come close to a knockout. That burn from the Rotom, really, really key there. And I think, a really good turn. Even though there was a lot of offensive options there for Hippolyte, he keeps himself in a really good position and, kind of helps out that Tyranitar as it's about to finish up its Dynamax turns.
Yeah, Will-O-Wisp is quite an uncommon move on Rotoms at this point. You saw it a lot in previous formats, but when everyone discovered the nasty plot on the Rotom, that seemed to be the set to go to with all of the Rotom forms, where you would have the Thunderbolt and then the stab move of choice with the form of the Rotom that you have. But Will-O-Wisp coming out here, really reducing the damage from that Rillaboom, letting that Tyranitar take the Woodhammer with ease. We saw the Tyranitar outspeed the Rillaboom as well, so this is a really, really speedy Tyranitar coming out here, and we'll still be able to fire off some big moves. Because that Rillaboom is burned, maybe it will be out of range of one of those grassy glides that the Rillaboom is so known for going for as well, which would put it, allow it to attack before the Tyranitar, but may not be strong enough, so that could be a very crucial burn here.
We'll see how it plays into the rest of the game. Tyranitar, a little bit scared. No, it's not in its Dynamax form. Decides to protect itself. Rillaboom does go with the grassy glide. That's still a tough one to say. And Tyranitar playing it safe there. But Rotom's going to use that opening to just overheat. Rillaboom has no chance against that one and is felled very, very quickly there. Lapras, this is its last turn of Gigantamax, so it really needs to start trying to make a difference in this last turn, particularly because Kosta will now be down to his final two Pokemon. There's the Max Geyser, lands into the Rotom, as you'd expect. Does take away the control of the weather from the Tyranitar, so that's quite helpful, because there's not going to be any switching from either side, as the Pokemon count is leveled 2-2. Tyranitar's got its weakness policy activated, Lapras has got its weakness policy activated, and we're going to get that little bit of recovery from the grassy terrain and set us up for what should be a pretty good finale to this game.
Yeah, it'll be crucial what the final two Pokemon for each players will be. It's going to be that Urshifu, the Rapid Strike variety of the Urshifu coming in for Hippolyte's side, and the Cinderace for Kosta. So this is going to be an interesting turn. The Cinderace should be the fastest Pokemon on the field and would be threatening down that Tyranitar to be able to pick up a knockout before it could threaten the knockout on the Lapras with something like a Rock Slide. And the Urshifu would be threatening down the Cinderace as well, but the Cinderace would be able to change its type if it went for a super effective move into the Tyranitar, but the Lapras did just set up the Rain, which would power up the water moves coming out from this Rapid Strike Urshifu, which is also threatening down this Lapras with fighting moves. So the Cinderace could probably deal with the Tyranitar, maybe not the Urshifu this turn, but the Lapras would be very threatened, and it's going to go for a Protector.
Yeah, I think the Lapras absolutely has to do that. Cinderace banking on the high jump kick. I don't feel good watching this. I don't know how people do it to themselves, playing it there. It does land on Tyranitar, and it's going to be a comfortable knockout there. No questions about that one. So it is the fighting type now. That could be just something to track for the rest of it. Urshifu's close combat will go towards Lapras. We know that it can't do anything about that. So the Protect's not the most valuable there as well. It's a contact move. You can't protect from it. So he is going to have to take the damage. And now we're going to come down to this kind of 1v1. Cinderace versus Urshifu. Of course, Cinderace does have the speed advantage. It is much, much faster. But it has to be so careful. It wants to land the high jump kicks. But we know what happens if you you miss your high jump kick. And Cinderace, not known for being bulky and able to kind of stall out games.
Yeah, and the Urshifu did just take a drop of special defense thanks to that close combat, so it'll be very close if this Urshifu will be in range of whatever the Cinderace wants to go for. We've seen the high jump kick already. That would be a very strong move and could potentially pick up the knockout on Urshifu, which does have some decent defensive stats. But yeah, it's going to be very close. If you want to go for that high jump kick, which may be your most powerful move, you could be high jump kicking into a Protect as well.
Yeah, you've got to be so careful. There's not going to be any detects, though. Maybe just changing his type to try and play around pretty wisely here. Decides to fire off the Iron Head, becomes a Steel type. That could certainly help out or cause some problems. Urshifu will use Surging Strikes, though. Wants to make sure it can land as much of that as possible. And Cinderace, even with the critical hit, takes the first... Oh, no, not a chance.
Yeah, that Rain Boost coming in clutch for Hippolyte there. Probably would have survived without the Rain Boost as well, because it did take 3 of the Surging Strikes to be able to knock out the Cinderace. So setting up the Rain was actually quite detrimental in the end with that Lapras. Opting to go for the Iron Head, a not very effective move into the Urshifu, and also making yourself weak against the close combats coming out from the Urshifu as well. So an interesting choice going for Iron Head. He did have access to that high jump kick, which would have been a lot stronger than the Iron Head, but maybe not feeling confident that it would pick up the knockout. Maybe expecting a Protect coming out from the Urshifu as well. We have been able to confirm that it's not going to be choice locked into that close combat as well, because it was able to change up its moves to the Surging Strikes as well. But yeah, it was a battle of the weakness policies, but then both of those Pokemon got taken out in the end game, and it just came down to that Cinderace and the Urshifu, but opted to click Iron Head instead of high jump kick.
Yeah, I mean, I think high jump kick, you have to try it, I think, at that point. There's no way with that Rain up you're going to take those Surging Strikes. You obviously can't Pyro Ball. You can't change into anything too fancy there. But I really, think that the end game was close. A lot closer than kind of the earlier turns may suggest. I think Kosta had a strategy right at the top of the game, which didn't quite work out. We did see him hovering the Trick Room there on the Confe. And if he wants to do that this time, I think he has to play it a little bit differently. He has looked to lock in the same team. But I think maybe getting up that Aurora Veil earlier, absolutely key. And he's umming and ahhing a little bit on the back two now, and I don't think that's too bad at all. But there might be some changes. I really enjoy actually seeing players team preview and kind of getting in their head a little bit about it.
Yeah, it's interesting seeing whether they just immediately go with a strategy that they think will be the most efficient one, or if they and ah between multiple and have to decide right at the end. But seeing the very speedy Tyranitar as well coming out would mean that the Tyranitar would activate a Lapras weakness ulti before the Lapras would fire off an attack in return. So that would be an interesting interaction to see in this match if they decide to go with the same strategies.
Yeah, no, I mean, the leads, I think, are such a good kind of indication on if you've learned your lesson from a loss, or if you've learned something from a win as well. So curious to see if there's changes. We are going to see one change in the start from Hippolyte. Not going to have the Tyranitar paired with the Excadrill. It's going to be paired with the Rotom instead, and Lapras and Whimsicott. So Lapras stays and Whimsicott takes the place of the Confe there. So nice little adaptations. That should give us a slightly different game.
Yeah, the Whimsicott quite a nice adaptation here. There was no Excadrill on Hippolyte's side of the field, so an interesting switch up to the Rotom. It does threaten the Lapras a bit more than the Excadrill does, but both would be weak to that Max Geyser coming out from the Lapras. And the Whimsicott being able to set Tailwind now very freely would make this Lapras move before the Rotom and the Tyranitar. We'd already seen that a Max Geyser was enough to take out the Rotom in the first game, so it would need to switch about or go for a Dynamax to be able to survive that move. But then that does mean that if you Dynamax the Rotom, you won't be Dynamaxing your Tyranitar, which was so successful for Hippolyte in the first game.
Yeah, I think he almost has to Dynamax Tyranitar at this point. Purely because if we're going to play this game with Geyser changing the weather, then you need Rockfall to change the weather back, and we're going to get this kind of flip-flop weather if we're not careful about it. The Rotom, though, decides to leave the field. Urshifu coming in a lot earlier. I feel like when a lot of players play with Urshifu, they save it to clean up things in the back, but maybe trying to take advantage of any potential weather changes that Kosta brings to the match for him. Tyranitar does Dynamax, wants to have a nice big amount of health before trying to activate its weakness policy, but Lapras is going to Gigantamax in this first turn as well, so not holding it like he did in game number 1, but immediately saying, you know what, I need to get some damage down, I need to try and do as much of this Lapras as I possibly can. So both trainers trying to carve out the early advantage here. Very, very smart, I think, from both of them, playing their team to its strengths. Whimsicott starts off the turn with a Tailwind. That's not uncommon. We've seen that for a number of months now. You guys should be used to that play. But it's really important because it does mean Lapras can move before the Tyranitar, something we did see a little bit differently in game number 1. Urshifu takes that quite comfortably, not too concerned about the damage it's taking there. The critical hit helping out, but he gets control of the weather, if not very, very briefly, rain on the field instead of sand. Tyranitar says, that's absolutely fine, I'm just going to change it back. I'm going to land the Max Rock Ball. I'm going to throw it at the Whimsicott, so I don't activate your weakness policy over on Lapras as well. Something you learned about from game number 1. And immediately, the Sandstorm is kicked back up.
Yeah, and the Whimsicott's able to survive this Sandstorm as well, so some nice investment on the defenses for that Whimsicott there, able to take that Rockfall, which would normally bring it down to its Focus Sash and be able to KO it with the Sandstorm as well. And the Urshifu being able to really shrug off that Max Geyser from the Lapras, even with a critical hit, so that is going to be quite especially defensively trained Urshifu, potentially carrying in that Assault Vest as well to make it even more bulky. And now the speed interactions are being flipped with the weakness policies. The Lapras would have to attack the Tyranitar first, or this Whimsicott going first for the Moonblast as well.
Yeah, Urshifu taking that Moonblast, I think that's confirmation on the item there. Something that if we go to game 3, Kosta might be keen to know, not having to worry about a Focus Sash. There we go, the Lapras following up though. The G-Max Resonance towards the Tyranitar isn't activating the weakness policy. Good to know there, but he does get the Aurora Veil up, which could help him. Doesn't want to play the kind of weather flip-flop game anymore. So just getting some damage down, maybe trying to help out a little bit there. Urshifu's still around, even after a Moonblast. Close combats into Lapras, that's going to help it out, but it does lower its defenses, not really the worst time for it. Does activate the weakness policy over on Lapras as well, so something to be a little bit concerned about in these last turns of Dynamax, but I think Tyranitar's going to try and clean it up as soon as possible. The Rockfall heading towards Lapras, the Aurora Veil from the G-Max Resonance though, means it's absolutely not enough. We're in exactly the same position Pokemon-wise, but a lot of damage coming down on Kosta's side of the field there.
Yeah, really bulky Urshifu, almost certainly confirming that Assault Vest on the Urshifu there, taking that Moonblast quite comfortably, and the Resonance doing almost no damage to the Tyranitar. So you see how scared players are of activating opposing weakness policies, and you get the Aurora Veil up with the Resonance, but then you really just are doing no damage back to that Tyranitar with the Resonance. If they fire off the Geyser, then the weakness policy is activated, and then they'll be taking a huge amount of damage. And the Lapras would have been knocked out to that Rockfall if it went for it as well. But now the Lapras has had its own weakness policy activated, it will be able to fire off a one final huge max move into the Tyranitar, with this Whimsicott actually switching out, not taking the knockout on the Urshifu with the Moonblast.
Yep, let's get the Rillaboom in play, maybe trying to bank on a way of tidying up the Tyranitar a little bit later on, maybe Grassy Gliding, while he's not burned, something like that could really help him out. Lapras decides to Max Guard on its final turn in the Gigantamax form, playing it very, very safely. Urshifu's U-turn though will head towards Rillaboom. That is a good chunk of damage from a move that a lot of people usually use just to reposition their board, and that bit of repositioning could really cause problems. We saw Hippolyte, putting that Rotom next to that Tyranitar in game number 1, and he's free to do it, or reveal his 4th Pokemon to Kosta.
Yeah, and really nice chunk of damage with the U-turn as well, and the Urshifu has stuck around and will be a switch-in for Hippolyte in the future, being able to shrug off both the Max Geyser and the Moonblast as well.
Max Rockfall heads towards the Lapras slot. Not too bad, you're Max Guarding yourself, you're keeping yourself safe. But most importantly, on the last turn of its Dynamax, the Lapras didn't decide to try and Max Geyser. Now without that Max Geyser, it means he has no way to control the weather right now. That means when the Excadrills come back in, basically this Tyranitar Excadrill pairing is feeling pretty good. Not much damage down on Tyranitar, complete control of the weather for the foreseeable future, so even though Dynamax is over for this game, still some really good board positioning, and this Rillaboom's got a lot of work to do, I think.
Yeah, interesting choice not to make use of the final turn of Max with the +2 special attack that you got from the weakness policy, and now the Excadrill gets to come in the Sandstorm. So we'll be outspeeding both the Rillaboom and the Lapras here. The Rillaboom does have fake out pressure onto the Excadrill, and there should be one more turn of Tailwind for Kosta as well, so the Lapras should be moving before the Tyranitar still. So Rillaboom could be making that Excadrill not move for the turn with the fake out, and then Lapras has to go for one of those inaccurate moves. It had the chance to go for a max move, which would have had perfect accuracy, but now you would have to see him go for a Hydro Pump if he wants to hit launch a super effective move into the Extra Drill or the Tyranitar, and that could be missing.
Yep, well, Extra Drill's going to leave the field. Urshifu coming back in its place. Not really got much more to do with such low health. Tyranitar playing it smart, just going to protect itself this turn, saying no thank you to those Hydro Pumps. Rillaboom's Fake Out will head towards that slot where the Extra Drill was, and, surprisingly, you get a knockout with Fake Out there. Urshifu just taken from the field, but Extra Drill wanting to come back in when it's a little bit safer. Labras's Hydro Pump into the Protect. No shocks there. Sandstorm damage ticking around. Obviously, the grassy terrain is going to help out a little bit there. And, I think Hippolyte just waiting to play in a situation where there's no more Tailwind. That's the only thing really keeping him down right now.
Yeah, and he's able to use up the Fake Out from the Rillaboom as well, as the Tailwind does peter out for Kosta's side. And now if he wants to bring back in the Extra Drill, it won't be threatened down by a Fake Out and would be able to make a move this turn and outspeed both of Kosta's Pokemon with that Lapras and the Rillaboom as well. It's going to bring in the Rotom instead. That is still going to be threatening down both the Lapras and the Rillaboom as well. And we saw how much the Overheat did in the first game. Would easily be able to pick up the knockout on this Rillaboom if it decides to go for it as well. And we already know that the Tyranitar did outspeed the Lapras before the Tailwind, so now the Tyranitar should be moving first again. But this time the Rillaboom isn't burned. It is threatening down that Tyranitar with a full-powered Grassy Glide, which could be very close in picking up the knockout. So the Tyranitar has also just protected as well, so that slot is very threatened by that Grassy Glide.
Yep, well, both players trying to slow it down a little bit here. Protect on Lapras this turn. Rillaboom's Grassy Glide. No burn into Tyranitar is enough to pick up the knockout, so a nice little bit of knowledge there that it's pretty easy. No worry about the weakness policy activating. And Rotom, not trying to fire out Will-O-Wisp, uses the Thunderbolt, and a really kind of good turn, picking up a basically free knockout for Kosta there. So Hippolyte's going to be bringing his Extra Drill back in as his last Pokemon. And really key to note, he doesn't have control of the weather right now. There's no sand in play. So that Extra Drill is going to be a little bit more exposed than it might usually like to be.
Yeah, and if Kosta has that Cinderace waiting in the back, it will be outspeeding this Extra Drill now that the Sandstorm has subsided. The Rotom is still going to be threatening down both the Lapras and the Rillaboom. It pretty much just gets to take its choice for knockout with its Thunderbolt or its Overheat. But the Extra Drill is going to still be threatened down by that Grassy Glide coming up from the Rillaboom, and also the Hydro Pump coming out from the Lapras. So the Grassy Glide is going to be what we're seeing coming out.
Yep, Grassy Glide into Extra Drill, not enough to pick up the knockout. Does mean Extra Drill can fire back with the Rock Slide. Not going to be enough for a knockout on either side. But Rotom's Will-O-Wisp heads towards that Rillaboom. It can be really dangerous if this Lapras is free to move and doesn't flinch from the Rock Slide. Communication with the other trainer was interrupted as well, so curious to see what the meaning on that one is, and how this one plays out.
Yeah, that would have been an interesting endgame. I would like to see that played out. Opting to burn the Rillaboom when he could have taken the knockout with the Overheat from the Rotom, or the Thunderbolt into the Lapras as well. So the Extra Drill got put down very low. That was a very strong Grassy Glide coming out, showing how much Hippolyte wants to be burning that Rillaboom. But just a turn too late, the Tyranitar was taken out by the Grassy Glide. The Extra Drill was put very low in range of whatever move that Kosta would want to go for. And yeah, that would have been a very interesting endgame, but it looks like we're going to be jumping into a third game now.
Yeah, I mean, I imagine that if the Lapras hits there, as soon as it lands a Hydro Pump on the Rotom, that kind of wraps it up, right? And then we've already seen the Extra Drill can't take another Grassy Glide from that. So maybe just kind of calling the game a little bit early there. We're heading on into game number 3. Really nice adaptations there, I think, from Kosta. Learning a lot from what happened in game number 1. Playing very, very smart about it and saying, you know what? This was a problem that I didn't Dynamax early. And he got a lot more value out of the Lapras, even with that turn 1 Gigantamax. I really liked his changes. I thought Hippolyte played well too. I think sticking with that same 4, I think it's the perfect 4 for this matchup. But just that decision towards the end, bringing the Rotom in when the Extra Drill could have taken advantage of one more turn of sand, could have cost him dearly.
Yeah, the Whimsicott over the Comfey being very crucial for Kosta. The game 1, the Comfey just got knocked out immediately and wasn't able to set up any Trick Rooms, but the Whimsicott is guaranteed to set up that Tailwind if the opponent doesn't have any kind of Fake Outs, which it doesn't look like the Hippolyte has on his side of the field. So the Whimsicott will always be able to get up that Tailwind for the Lapras, and Yeah, the Urshifu was also very crucial for Hippolyte as well. It was able to shrug off those special attacks very comfortably and even become a sacrificial lamb for that fake out as well, being able to burn the fake out from the Rillaboom to be able to get another switch in without the Rillaboom being able to threaten fake out pressure onto the field. So Hippolyte definitely needs to adapt to that Whimsicott potentially coming out again.
Yep, and Hippolyte heading back to game number 1. That was a lot more comfortable for him. Just going, both trainers actually going exactly with what won them their game in this set. So the lead that worked for them is what they're sticking with. And I like this. I really do like the Lapras versus Tyranitar, kind of the dance that we have to do around the whole concept of activating the weakness policy. And of course, the weather kind of tricks and saying, well, I want to go first, I want to deal damage, but I also don't want you to have weather at the end of the turn. And there's just a lot of kind of thinking ahead and planning out where you're going to exert those bits of control that I really like from these teams.
Yeah, it's definitely an interesting dynamic. The Whimsicott gets its Tailwinds guaranteed if it wants to set that up, but then the Extra will still be outspeeding the Lapras, at least in the Tailwind, so it would probably be able to take out the Whimsicott with an Iron Head in combination with that Sandstorm as well. But we're going to be getting another turn 1 Dynamax from this Tyranitar as well, going to be threatening down the Lapras with those Rock Falls, and kind of have to see if the Lapras is going to be following suit with its Gigantamax, and it looks like it is going to be.
Tyranitar always comes back, no matter what format Tyranitar's legal in. It always makes an appearance, and now it's taking advantage of the Dynamax abilities. Something that, you know, it hasn't seen the most Dynamax usage early on, but it's now getting its time to shine under Hippolyte's team. Of course, Lapras, Gigantamaxing, very well known, very common, something we've seen for a few series now already. No shocks, Whimsicott Tailwinds. Turn 1 Whimsicott, I think the mouse or, hover just goes to Tailwind automatically. You just get to get right there and start playing with it with no problems. There is going to be the weakness policy activation right off the bat. Certainly not what you want to see all the time, but there's the G-Max Resonance in response. Just trying to get that Aurora Veil set up so crucially to see, if you can weather the storm this Tyranitar's going to be firing back with. Max Rockfall, this is going to hurt.
Yeah, +2, that's going to be doing a lot of damage, and Earthquaking yourself, not normally the play you want to be going for, but really boosting the power of that Tyranitar as well, bringing that Lapras really low down. And the Excadrill is still going to be outspeeding the Lapras in that Sandstorm as well, so going to be able to pick up the knockout on that Lapras with just a tiny bit more damage than it needs to do with the Excadrill, and is probably going to be out of Moonblast range of the Whimsicott as well. So a really fantastic turn coming out from Hipployte. The addition of Grassy Surge Rillaboom to the formats may make players want to drop Earthquake off from their Excadrill in favor of High Horsepower, because that Grassy Terrain does reduce the damage of Earthquake, but Earthquake coming in absolutely clutch for Hippolyte here, doing a huge amount of damage to that Lapras. Because the Lapras was fearing activating the weakness policy on the Tyranitar by itself, then the Excadrill can just do it for it instead and be able to put the Lapras really low. And yeah, fantastic turn 1 play coming out from Hippolyte.
Yeah, I think Hippolyte really backed Kosta into a corner there, and now he's forced to respond in a slightly awkward way. Max Guard onto the Lapras, making sure it can't take any damage. No Iron Head coming through there. Whimsicott tries its best to get involved with kind of firing back, but the Moonblast pretty much shrugged off by the Tyranitar. And for Whimsicott's troubles, he's just going to be knocked out through the Max Rockfall. So Hippolyte very well aware of how the weather changes could impact him. And yeah, I like the way he's playing around this, just being smart about it and saying, you know what, I've really got to make sure that I always have control of the sand to make sure this Excadrill can continue to do the work that it needs to do.
Yeah, and that was a really nice play in response from Kosta there, sacrificing the Whimsicott to be able to get this switch in for the Rillaboom as well. The Lapras is very low now. It should be KO to one more turn of Sandstorm. So this will be the last move coming out from the Lapras this turn, unless it wants to switch out. But yeah, the Rillaboom most likely going to pick up a knockout on that Excadrill with the Grassy Glide now. And because of the Tailwinds, the Lapras would be able to outspeed the Tyranitar as well. So a really nice turn 1 play coming out from Hippolyte, but Kosta's responded very well to be able to position himself very nicely for this turn.
Yeah, I think the Grassy Glide Rillaboom really starts to cause some problems here. Just the pressure it provides and dealing with the Excadrill outside of worrying about its ability. Lapras tries to max Geyser on the final turn of Dynamax. So we're back into the same position we were in game number 2, where Dynamax is over. And you know what? You don't have control of the weather, so we just have to play the rest of the game at kind of your opponent's choice. In this case, the Sandstorm from Max Rockfall and Sandstream as well. So Rillaboom is going to be at full health. That's always nice to see. Tyranitar getting a little bit healthier, but it is going to drop out of its Dynamax form at the end of this turn. And, you know, Kosta's down to his last 2 Pokemon, but they are 2 very offensive Pokemon in Rillaboom. And the Cinderace he's about to bring in, he just has to, you know, be very careful about what Hipployte has in the back. He's going to show us the Rotom first. So there could be that Urshifu again. It could be the same 4 as it has been throughout the whole of this set. But I like, you know, I think both trainers are kind of in control of their own destiny now, right? If they make the right call, they're going to be able to get knockouts from in the game. If they start mispredicting or taking attacks they don't want to, then it could turn nasty for them.
Yeah, and there's an interesting interaction here with the Cinderace and the Rotom. The Cinderace, if it wants to take out the Tyranitar, would have to go for something like an Iron Head or High Jump Kick. Or if it wants to damage the Rotom with a stronger move, it would still have to change its type, and that would get rid of its fire typing, which would allow the Rotom to go for a burn if it wanted to onto the Cinderace. Both Pokemon on Kosta's side are physical attackers, so a burn would be beneficial on both of them. If the Cinderace wants to go for an Iron Head into the Tyranitar as well, it would make itself weak to an overheat coming out from the Rotom as well, so Kosta would have to be very careful of that and instead opts for the High Jump Kick.
Yep, decides that Tyranitar, you know, we've seen what it's done before. Do want to do some damage, but it's not heading towards the Tyranitar, actually towards the Rotom. So it is definitely scared of the Rotom, and the Rotom's going to get doubled into. No chance to throw out those burns that you were talking about, Jamie. The combination knockoff, revealing the safety goggles, maybe a little bit late, but, you know, good to know. And High Jump Kick does get it there. Rillaboom will take a lot of damage from the Lash Out as well. But dealing with that, leveling up the Pokemon count, I think absolutely key for Kosta here.
Yeah, great play from Kosta here. Being able to take out that Rotom before it was able to overheat the Rillaboom or burn either of his Pokemon. And the Tailwind has petered out now, but the Cinderace is probably still going to be the fastest Pokemon on the field. The grassy terrain is still up, so this Urshifu coming in, which is almost certainly going to be that Assault Vest, means it won't be able to protect, and Rillaboom still has the grassy terrain to be able to give priority to the Grassy Glide as well, so the Urshifu is going to be very threatened down by this Rillaboom, and so it will be very close if the Grassy Glide is able to pick up the knockout on that Urshifu, and the Tyranitar has taken some damage as well, so it's probably going to be in range of an Iron Head. It'll definitely be in range of a High Jump Kick if the Cinderace wants to risk that as well, so it'll have to come down to Kosta's confidence in his Cinderace to be able to pick up the knockout on the Tyranitar with the Iron Head, or if he just wants to take the very big risk that is always a big one with the High Jump Kick, because the Grassy Glide is almost certainly going into this Urshifu and probably taking the knockout.
Oh no, we saw him lock it in, we know what's going to happen, but Tyranitar protects itself. Rillaboom does Grassy Glide, has no reason to do anything but, and easily knocks out the Urshifu. I don't think it's going to be a problem for Kosta, but you do hate to see it. Cinderace's High Jump Kick towards the Protect, not what you want as it keeps going, crashes and loses half its health for its troubles as well. I don't think it means Tyranitar's going to win the game, but it does show that, hey, High Jump Kick does a lot of damage, but it's a dangerous move.
Yeah, very dangerous, and most likely going to be in Grassy Glide range with the Tyranitar as well. Being able to take the knockout on the Urshifu with just one Grassy Glide is just really showing how prominent the Rillaboom with that Grassy Glide can be. Why some people are opting for the single strike variety of the Urshifu over the rapid strike, because it's so threatened by that Rillaboom.
Tyranitar protects itself again, gets the double protect, not something we see as often nowadays compared to previous years. Grassy Glide lands into protect, and Kosta saying, no, if I'm going to win, I want to win with both my Pokemon on the field. I don't need to land a High Jump Kick on you. I'm just going to start Iron Heading. No issues there. A little bit of HP restoration from the grassy terrain. I don't think it's going to make much of a difference, but I just think it's funny that Kosta says, I've High Jump Kick once. You're not going to get me with that trick again.
Well, that would have been a way out for Hippolyte. If the High Jump Kick would have missed and knocked out the Cinderace, if the Tyranitar was able to stall out the grassy terrain, could have been able to outspeed and knock out the Rillaboom, which looks like it is what it's going for.
That's 3 protects in a row from this Tyranitar, really putting in the work that it needs. Cinderace keeps going with the Iron Heads as Rillaboom keeps trying with the Grassy Glides. Not going to be able to keep using those forever. if the terrain is going to be expiring, and that's got to be something he's thinking about. Of course, that recovery is making Tyranitar pretty healthy. That's the last turn of it. The grass has disappeared. Now that terrain not able to be reset, obviously, as Kosta's down to his last 2. And now this Rillaboom doesn't have access to the luxury of the priority grassy glide. It has to attack normally, like an old Rillaboom, you know?
Yeah,
it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. There's the Iron Head knockout.
Yeah, even with all that grassy terrain recovery, it was able to get with the triple protect as well. Was still in range of that Iron Head, so Kosta didn't need to go for that high jump kick after all, it seems. He could have just gone for that very safe Iron Head from the start, but the fact that the Rillaboom was able to take out the Urshifu with just one grassy glide meant that Hippolyte was just completely pinned in that endgame.
Yeah, I mean, as soon as that Urshifu went down to grassy glide, you knew that Tyranitar can do a lot, but if it's not afforded the opportunity to move and rock slide for so many turns, then yeah. And once the Cinderace is there as well, it says, yeah, even without, grassy glide priority, I still have something quicker that can knock you out. And I think really kind of smart endgame planning there by Kosta. There was some great turns from both players across that whole set. I really enjoyed, the way they made adaptations. I really think that there was a lot learned for Kosta in game number 1, and I do think what happened to him in game 1 allowed him to win games 2 and 3.
Yeah, unfortunately, Comfey wasn't the play for this match. The Whimsicott was much more beneficial, being able to set up those tailwinds and putting his Pokemon faster, like with the Lapras being faster than the Rotom, being able to threaten the Max Geysers there as well. The Whimsicott was very crucial in the game plan for Kosta. Unfortunate seeing the Comfey not doing the work this week or the previous week, but this time Kosta was able to take the win for Greece.
Hey, it's making the squad every single week. And you know that it's 1 week there's going to be a matchup where it's just absolutely perfect and it's able to put in a whole lot of work. So that's it from Greece versus